Hello and welcome to Moving Forward, a podcast by Good Habits. I'm your host, Remy Reuling. In this podcast, we make sure that you get all the insights you need to build a high-performing learning culture to future-proof your organization. Whether you're an HR professional, a learning and development manager, or anyone looking to give your team a leg up, you'll get the trends and tricks to get your people learning and moving forward. In each episode, we invite an expert or two to unpack some key statements designed to get them sharing their best insights. In this episode, we explore the CARE principles. Why is it more important than ever for businesses to prioritize collaboration, agility, reliability, and empathy? What key skills should we focus on developing in our employees? And how can embracing these principles create long-term benefits for your organization? To help unpack this, I'd like to welcome Isabel Verstraeten and Gennaro Snijders. Isabel, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do? What's your work?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. First of all, I'm a growth strategist, Remy. That means that I help organizations grow their people, both employees and customers, clients, also their products and their brand, which 3 domains that are in full transition these days.
Exactly, especially if we're looking at like digital revolution, all the things that make us remote work, right? All of that stuff should be applied, or the CARE principle should be applied to all that we do right now. We'll get into that a little bit more. I'd also like to introduce you, Gennaro, as the general sales manager and also ex-pro footballer. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Gennaro Snijders, I'm a sales manager at Good Habits, and in my role, I'm responsible for the Dutch market. I do this together with 10 colleagues, and yes, I have a diverse background. I transitioned from a football player, a 15-year career, into the business. So I'm now 8 years in L&D, and when I have time left, I also volunteer as a board member at a football club. So yeah, completely different things, but you can see some comparisons.
Awesome. Even your background suggests that you care about all of this stuff, right? What's your relationship to these principles? I mean, you know them, but do you apply them in any way?
Yes, I think they are very important because we work with humans, with people, and that's all about soft skills. So for me, they are very important principles, and there's one that stuck out for me, and that's I won't tell it yet, but maybe later on we'll get there.
Keeping things a secret.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right, let's get into it. We have 4 statements that we'd like to unpack, of course. I'll be devil's advocating all of them. So let's start with the first one. Statement number 1. Collaboration is only as good as your tool stack. Now, a little bit of explanation is needed. I think in a lot of organizations, we work with computers and stuff, and all of these tools that we have, like Jira, like Slack, like Teams, all of that stuff, that's the only way in which we can actually collaborate, is it not?
Yeah. Can I go, Gennaro?
Of course.
Well, of course, it's the basics of collaboration is to have the tools. But what I see in reality is that leaders focus too much on these tools. They say, well, we've invested in this process, we have these tools, but they forget the human part of collaboration. And you can have the best tools in the world. If people don't feel like collaborating with each other, or they don't want to collaborate with each other, you can have top gear, it won't happen.
So there's a lot of resistance, I hear you saying.
I'm not saying there's always resistance, but people need to be explained in a very clear and proper communication why you collaborate with others, internally, externally. Because for people, it's very important to be part of a crowd, of an identity, of a community. And that community can be, for instance, for Gennaro, the sales department. Why collaborate with people from accountancy or, so it's like, us, the sales, that's what we know. So,
Siloing, yes.
Exactly.
We're familiar.
Yes, exactly. So people need a little push to go beyond what they feel as their crowd, their community, their team. And leaders don't explain it enough or don't explain it well enough and don't spend enough time on clear communication why collaboration is crucial.
Right, right. Well, Gennaro, you've seen both sides of this, right?
Yeah.
Both in your previous career as a footballer, collaboration would be the most important thing. So how do you feel about this statement?
Just like Isabel, I don't agree because I think it's important that you have a good community in place where everybody in that community knows what their role is and how they can contribute to the success. And I think tools are also important, but they are also there. Yeah, I think they are there to create a good structure.
Right.
But it's about the people who are working in the community, and if you have that in order, then you can also hold people accountable because it's then clear for everybody what their role is inside that community.
Interesting. And accountability, I hear that a lot, right? Holding people accountable and stuff. Of course, we're talking about collaboration, so it's not just about single performance. We're talking a lot about employees and performance, let's say. But in your community, your previous community, and even now, basically, performance is top of the line, right? So you do need those tools to measure accountability, to measure whether people are doing their jobs correctly.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Well, for me, collaboration starts with trust.
Right.
So collaboration means you work together, and that means I need to know my colleague or my teammate, what drives him, what are his strengths, but also what are his pitfalls. And if we have that clear, then we can look like, okay, how can we make it, put it together, and then we're gonna look at results. But for me, it's most important that you have this community, you have this feedback culture where there is trust, where everybody can also be vulnerable.
Right. Okay. Well, thinking about that, Isabel, you just said that leaders are mostly responsible for promoting the collaboration between teams or between people. And what you're saying is basically, no, it should be bottom up, right? Everyone is responsible and we have a shared trust in each other to collaborate in the perfect way. So which one is it, top down or bottom up?
It's both, in my opinion.
Yeah, good.
It's both, in my opinion. But I fully agree with Gennaro that trust, how to collaborate, the first thing that you need is to trust your gut feeling. It's intuition, something, again, that is often forgotten. Because we always think that everything we decide in our heads, we decide, rationally. But actually, trusting someone is emotionally and is done in your gut.
Right.
And so very often leaders, they forget that you can put people together, but if they don't trust each other and you don't spend time on taking away the elements why they don't trust each other, then collaboration won't work because they will hide information or they won't be fully aligned or they will say in a meeting, yes, we'll do that. And then they go home or they go back to their office and they say, no, we're not going to do that because what they are asking is impossible or whatever. So people won't fully commit to the collaboration because they are hiding something, because they don't trust you. So that's really an element of importance. And that's why it's bottom up and top down.
All right. But what can HR and L&D do to promote that then? Because if it should come from the leaders, but then the trust is made bottom up, then HR is somewhere in the middle and they're just stuck, aren't they not?
For me, the role of HR is very important, especially in this fast-moving and fast-changing world of human resources. Because today, all kinds of generations, but specifically younger generations, they demand a new type of leadership.
Right.
And if the HR department understands this, they can put it on the agenda all the time with the management team or the board of directors or whoever decides on, for instance, what L&D investments that should be made. So for me, their role is really crucial to put it at the number one L&D investment for the future is to really dive into the needs today of employees and what do they need to perform at their best, because, of course, it's all about performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in my role, I visit a lot of companies. And what I notice is that the role of HR is changing. In the past, they were the one who decided like, hey, this is what my people need. These are the programs, what will help us further. But when we look at the new generation who will start working, they have more autonomy, they have more access to information, and they also want to be in charge
Right.
of what they learn. So I think exactly what Isabel is saying, we need to start listening more to what the needs are instead of deciding it for the people.
The more consultancy, let's say.
Exactly, more facilitating role.
All right. So, Gennaro, we've touched upon the subject of purpose,
Yeah.
right? And that is really interesting, what you just said, because purpose and collaboration also go hand in hand. You need a sort of direction. But this is what most companies are struggling with, I gather. What do you see in that sphere?
Yeah, what you see is that a lot of companies invest big money in building these cultures, company values.
Right.
That's a good thing. But I think the most important thing is how do you make the transfer to your employees? One good way to do that is, you have your onboarding. It's the first touch point where a new colleague is coming in your company.
Yeah.
How can you make sure that those company values come back at the beginning? I think that's a good question. And I think we can, you can be very, I think you can make a good step if you start working on that.
Right. You heard the man. That's a good question. I think within all the CARE principles, not just collaboration, lies a lot of the answer. So speaking of that purpose and speaking of creating these company values, is this the holy grail for promoting collaboration?
Well, purpose and values and culture, it's all part, because within the CARE principles, there's like a 20-step approach how to reach excellent collaboration, how to be agile, how to become reliable or remain reliable,
right.
and show more empathy. And culture and values is very important in that. For me, like Gennaro said, there's a lot of, I see a lot of organizations that spend tons and tons of euros on fancy wording in values. And then, first of all, they are not at all shared with the people.
Right. Here's our values. Go work for them.
So it's exactly. So it's like an exercise that's done with the board of directors in fancy strategic offsites, and then somebody says, "Okay, these are our values. Now let's put them on paper. Let's put them against the wall, and that's it." It doesn't live within the organization. The people who work there have not had their input in it. So the first lesson I would give anybody is that don't spend so much money with outside people on your values. Ask your employees why they join the organization. What do they think is a good value for an organization, and make it as simple as possible. A lot of CEOs, they don't even know their values because they have like 5 values, and when I ask after the number 3, they're already forgotten.
It's gone.
So too many values, it's not the right way to go.
Yeah.
And keep them simple, that you always remember them.
Great.
That's the first thing. A second thing about purpose. Purpose is very important if it's a true purpose, if it's authentic. Again, don't make up a purpose for marketing reasons. If you don't have a purpose, and some organizations simply don't find one, then it's okay. But know that younger generations are really looking for a purpose. If you do the purpose exercise, again, make sure that you find a real purpose and do it in an integrated process with all your employees.
Right.
So you can already feel who wants to work for a purpose, who doesn't care about the purpose. It's again, I think what is fundamental about the CARE principles, it's not a quick solution for all problems, but your culture, and like Gennaro was saying, you can do it in onboarding processes to include your values, for instance. But where I see it go wrong is when people have to say goodbye to people. When the HR department has to, or the manager has to take a very tough decision of letting go of people, then
like
suddenly
offboarding.
the values are out of the window.
No longer shared, too.
No longer shared and no longer really true.
Right. I think that says a lot about the subject of collaboration itself. It should not just be something that you do with the team at that moment, but you really have to build it up from the bottom down, but also from top up, right? We need these shared values for each and every employee, and we all need to work on it. Awesome. Let's get to the second statement, because we've talked a lot about collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Building values and that sort of stuff. But that can get complex, and that is where the second of the CARE principles comes in, agility, right? So statement number 2, agility in L&D is just about adapting to change. Agility is about change, about the changing world, everything transforming. And as you've said, Isabel, that transformation is mostly what a lot of companies are struggling with. So is this just a catch-all? Do they need more agility, more speed?
Well, in general, we know that change is the only thing which is constant in life, right?
Right.
Still, in practice, we see that people are really risk averse, so they are really opposite, reacting opposite to
Oh
change.
man, I'm the exact same, yeah.
Exactly. So yes, companies do realize that they need to be agile and that they need to adapt. And but agility for me is a container word that contains a lot of things. And yes, it's about flexibility, but it's also about resilience, building mental resilience, which is very important today because there's so many changes and so much chaos in the world around us, and we are 24/7 updating ourselves on that world. So
Yeah, on a personal level.
Exactly. So our brain is never taking enough rest anymore and gets too much impulses. And then there's a third aspect for me of agility that is really important. When you look outside company walls, you see that you look into the streets and there's all kinds of people from all kinds of colors, from all kinds of social backgrounds. And when you look inside company walls, very often it's more or less the same color you see, more or less the same age you see, and more or less the same social background you see. So we don't pull in the diversity and inclusion that we already see in the world, in the society. It doesn't go fast enough to pull them in on good levels in organizations. So, and there's a reason for that. Psychologically, people love to surround themselves with people who look the same, who think the same, who watch the
thinking,
same,
basically.
who watch the same movies, who go to the same football, watch the same football teams. So it's very, we love to say that we are agile, but at the same time, we love to be comfortable with the things that we know around us. And today, that's more than ever. That's why we are so nostalgic about the past. And that's why we very often like to think, oh, in the past, everything was better. And why should we change it? And when you try to change things within organizations, processes, whatever change that is demanded, people put the heels in the sand, and go like, is it really necessary? Should we really do this? Wasn't it better the way we did it before? So I don't like to call the CARE principles soft because there's a lot of hard work.
There's a lot of stuff that you actually need to work for, yes. But if I look at agility, we've been talking a lot about agility being adapting to change. For me, personally, I would say more agility is getting ahead of change. Just seeing the change coming or trying to pivot the moment that you can, right? I think that you know a lot about this, both as your position as sales manager, right? There's a lot of change and you need to be the first to respond to that. Otherwise, you're never going to consult your customers the same way. So how do you feel about agility?
Well, exactly like Isabel was saying, agility is something that's very important, even if you're working in a fast-paced environment like, Good Habits is.
Right.
And the environment, the L&D space, it's constantly changing. So also the people who are working in it, they need to be adaptable, ready for that change. So I think it's a very important thing. Yeah.
But how do you think we can promote this? Because, you're selling products, you're selling a way to promote people or to help people in organizations. Adapting to change is one of the big things, right? It's gigantic, it's massive. So what would you give as tips to people who want to have this agility?
Well, the first question I would ask is, what happens if you don't change?
Ooh, Oh gosh. You get left behind. That would be my answer.
Well, I can give some examples of companies who didn't change. And then you can start making the conversation like, okay, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? And yeah, from there you can go on and say like, okay, this is the current situation. And these are multiple steps what you can take. So it's always good to look at how is the current situation and where do you want to go? And from there you can make a plan.
Right. This is also changing the employees and what they can, right? Do we all need to be that cutting edge, that we all can work with AI and with all kinds of new ways of working, agile working and Scrum and that sort of stuff? Do we even need it?
I don't think everyone in the company needs it, but I think it's very good to have as many people involved as possible in new techniques, in new technologies, in new ways of working, because the more common it becomes, the more it's normal to work in that way, to work with these tools, to work that fast. So very quickly, if you have two different rhythms in an organization, the ones that are slower, not working with the latest technologies, and the ones that do, you get two camps,
right,
which isn't great. But one of the things that I would give as a tip, how to be agile and how to promote agility and flexibility and resilience, is to be open to failure. Because if you try to change, sometimes it goes wrong. We see it today in technology. Some things that looked amazing only like 6 months ago, they are not going anywhere.
No.
And other things that were very small are huge today. So if you don't, again, create mental room for people to say, I've been working for 6 months on a project and now it's down the drain and nobody believes in it and I don't get funded anymore. And look at the other team. They are going and they are hitting the gold. You have to train people to deal with failure, to deal with a door that seems to close. And that is the toughest part about being reactive, about being resilient, is that it's not always a line that goes up. It's not always something that is only successful. There's a lot of failure before you are successful.
I feel that this is a really touchy subject for a lot of companies, right? We're all saying that, yes, failure is great. We need to fail fast and we need to fail hard. But no companies are actually doing it because failure is just, it feels bad, right?
Yeah.
As a pro footballer, you might agree with this. Is it the same in football?
Well, I must say I've learned the most from failure. When you look back at my 15-year career as a professional football player, like Isabel saying, it's not always going in a straight line.
Right.
And I think you lose more than you win. But for me, it's also about, okay, you fall down 7, you stand up 8. So that resilience is so important. And for me, I think it's also something what must come out of yourself.
Right.
But for me, also a leader is very important in this. How vulnerable is, when you look at the team, the community, how vulnerable can an employee be? And I think a leader can set the bar there.
Right.
Yeah.
That is really interesting, right? You saying that you've learned more from failure than anything else.
Yeah.
Because that means you've actually felt it. You have gone through that sort of failure that a lot of people are dreading, that they never want to see. So what would be your tip for people to actually embrace this failure and be resilient?
Well, when I look back, the person I am today is, of course, the 15-year career that I had, that I now can look back like, hey, the failure made me stronger.
Right.
So it doesn't come overnight. But when you're a professional football player or a top sporter or maybe a big director, you're always under pressure.
Right.
And I believe truly that you can get better in coping with that pressure just by doing it. It doesn't sound sexy, but it's actually how I experienced it, just by doing it. And if you really have that purpose of getting better at something every day, then I think that keeps you strong.
Interesting, because that is really like top athlete way of thinking.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that a lot of companies don't really have that top athlete way of thinking, at least not with most of their employees. So can we foster that? Can we foster a culture of wanting to fail? basically.
Sure, I wouldn't say it fostering a culture wanting to fail, but where I fully align with Gennaro is that if you have a common goal, let's not even call it the purpose, let's call it just a common goal. And you know when you fail, you know when you fall and you're on the floor and you go like, damn, I didn't manage to do it. But you know what your goal is. And you have a manager, indeed. You have a leader who picks you up off the floor and says, doesn't matter that you have fallen now. Come on, let's get back on your feet. Go home, take a rest. Tomorrow, we go for it again. You have that common goal. And the common goal can be very small on a team level. You can make it big on an organizational level, but you can even do it in a very small team. If people know why they are doing things, if they are allowed to fall on the floor and fail, and that's okay. Nobody is pointing at them, because that is what I see happening in organizations. They say, yes, we want to be agile, but then as soon as something goes wrong, somebody is there with the finger.
Right.
No, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. No, it's her fault because she said this or that. And what we forget, and it's a very simple trick, when you point at someone, there's 3 fingers pointing at yourself.
Very good, yeah.
So introspection.
Mirror it yourself, yes.
Introspection. What did I learn from this? And this is what Gennaro is saying. What did I learn from this? It's very uncomfortable. It's not nice to fail, but you learn from it. And it's from that uncomfortable learning moment that you grow as a person and that you grow as an organization. But if you remain stuck in the blaming, in the controlling,
pointing fingers
to other departments, to other people, you don't learn.
Right. So what you're saying is we basically need to create a culture of embracing all that people do. If it's a success, awesome, just celebrate it. If it's a failure, cool, also awesome, learn from it, right? Those are the most important things. And to me, it sounds like all the care principles working together. This
Totally.
is a lot of empathy as well. Yeah. We need to find empathy for people to pick themselves up on their feet, right? The only thing we haven't touched upon yet, though, is what I also think is really important in terms of picking people up, collaborating, being a successful organization. That is the R, reliability. And that is where statement 3 is from. Statement 3, reliability is rooted in certainty and control. Since if we want to be reliable, we also need to control the narrative, right? We need to know how people are going to react in certain terms, how leaders are going to react. So, yes?
I don't agree fully. Let's say 50%.
Oh, there is something in there. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Well, for me, reliability, let's say when I have a relationship with one of my colleagues, it's for me starts always with trust. Giving trust, that's for me the foundation.
Right. And is this you as a colleague, you as a leader, or?
Me as a leader, me as a colleague, me as a friend, a family member. It starts for me always with trust.
So you're saying it is about trust, right?
Yeah, for me.
Reliability is not control, because control feels like you playing the puppet master, but more about, I'd say, empowering someone to do the right thing?
Yeah, you could say that. For me, it starts with trust. So when we make a point about something and I can see that you deliver on that, for me, you are a reliable person.
Right.
But if multiple times it happens that you don't hold on the appointment, then I might start controlling. So for me, they go hand in hand, but it's also about your behavior. For me, but it always starts with trust, so that people can prove what kind of in Holland we would say in what kind of hout wood
what kind of wood you're carved from.
Exactly. So
I love anglicizing those kinds of proverbs. They work so fantastically well too. But what you're saying is we have control, right? And that should be a measure that you can do to prove that reliability or to make that reliability work. But is it then like the final thing that you can do if nothing's working? Or is it something that you use far more forward in the line?
No, for me, I like to give ownership to people. well, every individual is different. So some of
true
them maybe need more support, maybe more control to let them thrive, while others just need more autonomy. So based on the individual, I would make a decision of what is needed at that point. But for me, it always starts with trust.
Right. What does that say about the reliability of an organization to exert control or to give trust?
Well, I'm not a big fan anymore of the command and control leadership style. I think in the past, and maybe if you still are working in an organization with very old school processes and very controllable processes, then you can have a command and control leadership style. But if you work in a company like Good Habits or any organization that works with a diverse and multi-generational employee base, commanding and controlling, what are you controlling anyway? I mean, there's a bunch of people that you've hired for a good reason. Trust them. Trust them that the skills that they bring to the table, the knowledge that they bring to the table, which is very often a lot more accurate than your knowledge.
Right.
So how are you going to control them anyway? So I'm not a big believer in the command and control style. For me, it's a bit old school. I much more prefer to listen to people, to, like Gennaro was saying, what do they need? Do they need empowerment? Do they need me as a backup? What do people need to perform at their best? And reliability used to be a narrative of control, of manufacturing your own story. But today the story is in the hands of so many people.
Right. But isn't that dangerous, though? Just leaving everything up to all of the people, because what I can see is that that also leaves room for no leaders to actually grow out of that, for people to not know their direction, the purpose that they're going to, right? If you have this sort of laissez-faire, let's say, leadership style, then that can also mean that people just scatter around not knowing what to do. So what would be a fix for that?
Well, the thing is, Remy, is that I don't know if you're familiar with the term quiet quitting and loud quitting.
Yes.
It's something that happens. Quiet quitting is people that just remain in the job and they do the strict minimum, right? And loud quitting is when they go online on social media and they tell the world what goes wrong within an organization, how bad everything is and whatever. So you can control, for instance, we talked about this before, your culture, your values, put everything on paper, your employer branding campaigns. But if in reality it doesn't reflect what you're saying, what you think you're controlling, people will talk about it anyway. So is it a risk? Today, yes, it's a risk. But trying to control it is a fake sense of security that in the end you don't have anyway.
Right. Right. But that also means that if you're letting that go, right, you as a leader, people need to look up to you, right? Being a captain of a football team, for instance, people need to look up to you. And if something goes wrong, we know failure is good, so awesome. But still, if something goes wrong, then they're looking up to that leader to say, okay, we're going this direction, and this is the way we're going towards it, right?
I don't agree with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
awesome.
because for me that sounds a bit old-fashioned. Back in the past, the leader should know everything and he makes the decision. But like I think Isabel already mentioned, that's old-fashioned. You know, when you look at the leaders nowadays, they stand between their people. They listen. What do they need? But also
even physically, right?
Yeah, but also
Sitting
make
next
people responsible within your team. Give them ownership about certain processes, steps we're gonna make to be successful together. So I believe more in that,
right,
than be the one who's controlling and deciding everything.
Right, right. I'm searching for the role of L&D in all this, though, because they're not the leaders of the teams, right? Everywhere on the work floor, they're sort of behind the scenes, but then also not. So what can they do to foster this sort of sense of transparency and letting people do their thing without actually controlling what they're doing? Is there anything in your books, for example, on that?
Well, yeah, sure. There's many examples in my books because everything comes from my experience, right? And also the podcast interviews that I do in the Care Principles podcast. It's not easy today to be a leader. Let's be clear about that. It's not easy because the requirements to be a leader for older employees are very different than for younger employees. So it really depends on what type of people you have in your team, their age, their background. So it's a very difficult and very often very lonely job. So that is something that I do want to stress, that a lot of leaders today are very lonely. But what can you do? Like Gennaro said, saying, I know the answer to it all. I'm the leader and I'm pointing where we need to go. That is not the solution because you don't know. We have so many factors today in society, in organizations that are unclear, that saying that would be false.
Right.
And people, they feel it. Again, it's that gut feeling. They will look at you and you will go, we're going to the left, and they will look at you saying,
Does this happen a lot, the organizations that you help?
Of course, this happens a lot. Of course. So what a good leader today, in my opinion, should do is saying, listen, we have a couple of options. We could go left, we could go right. Let's go left. It might not be the way, but for now, let's try it. Because, right. And then you combine, of course, facts, If we go to the left for this reason, it seems like a good idea. I believe that for today, that's the best choice. So leadership is still about taking decisions. It's not leaving everything to the plate of your employees. You have to have a vision. You have to take decisions, but in a humble approach, not in a I know everything approach. That is what we see today in politics.
And so old-fashioned too. And again, for L&D, I think if I hear what you're saying, right, the most prominent role for L&D here would be to base their leadership programs on these principles of transparency, of being next to the people instead of above the people, instead of exerting control, just try to be as transparent as possible about the decisions you want to make. And then also bring them into those decisions, right? The values in companies that you've said.
And something we didn't talk so much about, but take time for communication. Because where I see a lot of things go wrong is in the communication. They say like, okay, we've decided this. This is the plan we're going to have. This is the vision. This is where we're going. And then they forget to spend time to communicate it clearly. So a lot of people today on the work floor, they are doing something. But when you ask them, why are you doing this? They have no idea. It's just like, yeah, that's what they told me to do. That's what they told me to do. Yeah, but why? Nobody told me. If people know why they are doing something, it facilitates the process.
It helps them ideate as well.
Of course.
100% agree. And I think also a quick win what HR can do, or L&D in this case, is to look at, we all know the annual review every year. Where's there, you have 1 hour with your leader to talk about what goes well and what can be better.
Right.
But why don't we make this conversation more continuously throughout the year? So I see that a lot of successful companies who are doing this at this point really helps to connect, to start communicating more. So if you're not doing this at this moment, I think you are walking behind as a company.
Yeah, you're leaving a lot of potential out.
Definitely.
Totally. And to add to this example, another way you can do is, instead of saying feedback moments, feed forward moments.
Right.
Because too often in organizations we look at what's going wrong. And so
instead of what could go right.
Exactly. And in this annual meeting, because there's a lot of reasons why we don't want to give you a raise, we're going to tell you everything. You're not there yet.
Yes.
So you didn't do that well. You could get better in this. And so we are pointing a lot of the focus on what went wrong instead of, hey, here, this is a growth plan for you. We saw this, you're quite good at that. But so feed forward. And in two directions. You can also give feed forward to your boss.
Yeah, right.
Which is scary, right? because not many bosses.
That's also the transparency. In that
It's
sense.
the transparency. It's the honesty. It's
Trust.
really
It's
the trust. Yeah.
Exactly.
We can all
this
learn.
is a perfect bridge, right? You're making my job as a host easy. So thank you, Isabel.
My pleasure.
Because this whole feed forward business, it's sort of new, but not really, because we've talked about it for a long time, but no one has actually done it, right? That is the problem with most organizations, being stuck in that past of just feedbacking everything that went wrong instead of feeding forward, which comes into the fourth statement, right? Statement 4, empathy is a skill that drives change. And that's what I wanted to talk about feeding forward. Empathy creates that feed forward. And that also makes the change happen in the future. So do you guys do that in your team, for instance?
Yeah, well, that's what I started in my introduction, that there was one thing in the CARE principle that I really liked, and that's
Right.
empathy.
There it
Because
is.
I believe that's a key element for change. Because like Isabel stretched out in the beginning, the world is changing, different generation, different backgrounds, and to really know and to understand where these people are coming from and what drives them. You need to have the ability, the empathy to understand them, but also for them to understand you. So I really believe that empathy can drive change. Yeah.
Right. But there are a lot of leaders, I think, and not trying to put any leaders down or anything, but there are a lot of leaders that don't really know what's going on with their employees, right? Both on a personal level and also at work, which I feel is basically the biggest problem in this. Empathy can drive change, but then we need to create empathy. But then how do we create empathy? That is the biggest question flowing around in my mind. And I have no expertise in this area. So Isabel, Gennaro, any ideas?
Well, it starts with introspection. It really starts with trying to be really honest with yourself,
Right.
and trying to understand, why am I not truly listening? Why do I have so much on my mind that even if I'm in a conversation, internally in my mind, I'm not listening because my head is full with my own worries. Because this is what is happening most of the time. We are listening, but we are not hearing what others are saying. So active listening is one of these skills. But it starts really with introspection.
Yeah.
Why can't I really listen to others? Why can't I help others? Why can't I? And then you have to, again, be vulnerable and tell yourself, maybe I'm in a leading position and it's not where I should be. Because very often leaders get promoted on seniority.
Yes.
They are very good at the skill. They are there for a couple of years and they get promoted. But very often, it's not because you're great in a certain job that you're a great leader. But it's very tough to admit that to yourself. I was one of these people. I was promoted through seniority. I was really a go-getter. I tried everything to get as fast as I could in the board of directors. And then once I was there, I had to lead a huge team. I was really bad at it.
But that is...
But admitting that was really tough.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say, but that is the biggest problem for people, right? The self-reflection is a really hard skill to know, to have, to learn, actually. Because self-reflection means also looking at your own failures. And once again, failure is hard to look at. And yet still, any leader, for you as well, right? You have become one of the bigger leaders here at Good Habits now. That empathy, how do you learn that? How do you exude that towards your employees?
Well, like Isabel stretched out, for me it also starts with self-reflection. Knowing what my strengths are, but also my pitfalls.
Right.
And I really want to understand my employees, what drives them. I really are interested in them, and they feel that as well. And I notice that the moment that they feel it, they also share more with me. They trust me more.
That comes with transparency.
Transparency. Yeah. And I think that's very important. For example, I said I work also as in a board at a football club with volunteers.
Right.
And those are 60 volunteers I have under me. And those are more difficult to lead because they don't have a salary. They have nothing to commit. But still they have to listen to you. They have to like you.
Yeah.
I think empathy is a very important skill in that order, to make sure that people want to work with you, but also that you can move them.
I'd love to ask you, Gennaro, how did you specifically learn that self-reflection, that empathy? Did that come from any L&D, or did it come from yourself or from your experience? Where does that come from?
Yeah, good question.
Thank you. I try my best.
Give you some compliments now and then.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think from the environment where I used to working as a professional footballer, you need to reflect every day to be on top of your performance, and you need to be vulnerable. And there are certain skill set I think you learn unconsciously. Unconsciously.
Gotcha.
And so I can't really give you a clear answer, to be honest. I think it's something also you have or not as a person, but I do believe you can develop it.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah.
Right. So how would companies, and I think this is a question for both of you, how would companies develop that sort of self-reflection in leaders so that they can show that empathy?
Well, one of the 20 steps that we didn't talk about yet, it's curiosity.
Right. I love curiosity.
It's to be open to others. It's to listen to others and to come with a growth mindset to work, and to think that tomorrow I'll be better than today. Tomorrow I'll know more than today. Tomorrow I'll be a better leader than today. Is not to think I know it, I have it, I'm on top of my game. No, the game, it's a never-ending game, and every day you can go to a next level. And that's curiosity for yourself. What do I do? What do I feel? Every day is different, right? You get up in the morning. Did you sleep well? Did you have kids who are sick, or whatever happens? Traffic, whatever happens. A cold coffee, anything can have an effect on your performance during the day. But if you're curious, oh, I'm reacting like this, maybe because I didn't sleep enough, or maybe the cold coffee is irritating me. My team member is doing this, it triggers this, or whatever, Curiosity, for some people, it's a negative word. For me, it's a very positive word, because it means that you remain open to whatever cues that you get in during the job or during your day to react to respond to.
That is a very good point. And I love this, right? Curiosity is one of the things that drives learning, one of the biggest things. It creates motivation. It creates a thirst for even more knowledge. And instilling that within both the employees and the leaders, I think, is a very important thing to do. Gennaro, any closing thoughts?
On what specific?
On all that we've discussed today, right? You've talked a lot about how it is to be a leader in an organization that's changing, in a world that's changing, but also within these terms of the CARE principles, you exude them. You are the CARE principles.
My biggest fan.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's a good book, by the way. Yeah.
So any closing thoughts on what we discussed today?
Yeah. Well, I think it's very future-proof. When we maybe think in the past we need a lot of hard skills, hard leaders, leaders who decide the direction where we are going through. We see that the world is changing, and we see, like I stressed out in the beginning, a lot of new generation is coming up who wants more freedom, wants more autonomy of the work. They want to know, what is my purpose in this whole strategy of the company where I'm going to work in. And I think if you want to make sure that you get the talents in, but also to keep them, I think we need to invest in the softer side of this business, the skills, to make sure that we enable our managers with this. Yeah.
Great answer. Totally agree, by the way. Isabel, any last thoughts?
Very often the CARE principles are considered soft skills. In reality, I see it every day. It's very hard to embrace these soft skills, because they can't be done by machines. It's the human side that has to be developed. And we know that machines sometimes are easier to adapt and to turn them into the next level or to give them an upgrade, while humans sometimes they really struggle to upgrade themselves. So there's not so much soft about the CARE principles, but they really talk about performance, about getting real engagement with your employees. And I can only say, try it out. It's not that difficult. There's a whole explanation that I explain in my books, but also in my podcast, and also in my keynotes and wherever I work as a strategic growth strategist. Simply try it out, because people today, and definitely younger generations, they are looking to lead it in a different way.
Right.
Can we agree on the skills that we call it power skills?
That's a good.
Power skills.
Thank you. That's
there you
very
have it,
good.
folks.
Yes.
A newly coined term of power skills for the CARE principles. But thank you both. So that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Moving Forward. If you've learned something new today, please share this episode with a colleague or with a friend. And while you're at it, give us a review. This helps others to find our podcast and might help them move their people forward too. Thanks for joining, and until next time.